Welcome back to Let's Play Ratchet Clank Tools of Destruction. I'm Nye.
I'm Mako, and I believe we are on to, where is it, Viceron?
We
just finished Viceron.
Yeah.
Next up is the Black Hole, which I think we've already done all the skill points for.
Except for one.
Except for, oh, right.
That one. Let's see, we were having a discussion last time at the end of the last episode about rare games we've played. And actually, I did have a question. Mako, have you actually played Pikmin?
I have. I've got a copy of the first one. Actually, I've got a copy of both of them for the first two for the GameCube somewhere around here.
Okay, here's going to be a fun question for you, because I'm kind of curious. I always want to compare on this one. What is your record speed for getting all 30 pieces? What's your fastest time?
Fastest time, all 30 pieces. Well,
Mako's thinking, for folks who don't know Pikmin, it is a game where you play as Captain Olimar, who has crash-landed on a strange and mysterious planet, and his ship has broken into 30 different pieces, not all of which are essential to flight. And the problem is, in order to leave the planet, Olimar has to get back as many pieces as he can, but there are many strange and mysterious creatures on the planet, most of which want to eat him. So Olimar has to take the help of these strange creatures known as Pikmin, which he names after the Pick carrots of his home planet, and he has to get their help in order to ensure that he will be able to get off the planet. He has to order them around and order them in squads, and also save them from being eaten by the large and terrifying creatures of the planet. So the problem is, while I think it's something like, there's only 15 pieces that you actually have to get in order to beat the game, there are, another 15 that you don't have to get, and if you've never beaten the game before, you won't know which 15 are unnecessary. In order to fully beat the game, you must get all 15 pieces, and then beat I took damage, damn it, or beat a final boss. Which is, the boss is an absolute pain in the butt.
Oh, yes, the boss is a pain in the butt. If I remember correctly, at least on the very first Pikmin, it is the final boss that has hung me up. I'm, ready to finish it, but I keep getting eaten.
Oh, that's a shame. Yeah, he's a pain. Well, because the thing is, the final boss is the 30th piece. You can't get it unless you've beaten him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If I'm remembering correctly, because also keep in mind, I think it's been at least a year since I've played that.
Okay, well, here's a question. Can you think, other than the final boss, what's your fastest time for getting 29 pieces?
29 pieces?
Because the final boss's piece is not, it's not essential.
No.
It's actually very much not essential.
If I remember correctly, and again, it's been quite a long time, I would have to dig out my GameCube to actually check it. I think my record is standing at around 21 days. I'm not that great at it.
Okay. My record is, if I remember correctly, my record is 1 day per area, which puts it at roughly 7 days.
Yeah, you don't need all the days.
No, not at all. The game gives you 30 days to beat it. And a day is roughly, 15 minutes long-ish?
Thereabouts, yeah.
So you don't need all 30 days to beat it. However, one thing that goes on is that, you don't have all as much time. And if you don't know how to beat the game, if you've never beaten the game before, you will need a considerable amount of time, because there are puzzles that you have to solve. Not necessarily, puzzles, but in order to get certain,
Keeping in mind that most of the pieces are in fact, all of the pieces are much larger than Olimar, the puzzle comes in, how do I get this thing that requires at least 50 Pikmin to carry? I'm being hyperbolic here, but...
Actually, no, that's about right in some cases. It's sometimes up to 100.
Up to 100. You can have a maximum of 100 Pikmin under you at a given time, but the puzzles become along the lines of, how do I get this insanely large device that requires, dozens of Pikmin to carry back to the ship?
While being attacked by deadly enemies. That's usually actually the part of it is, you'll have enemies that will want to kill your Pikmin, and if they do, you're losing whatever thing that is you got, and you have to go back and get it.
Enemies and environment, because there are Pikmin that can only... There's various environmental things that each different kinds of Pikmin can only handle.
Like, only blue Pikmin can swim, only red Pikmin can survive in fire, only, yellow Pikmin can survive in electricity.
I was going to say, as of the second game, only yellow Pikmin can handle electricity, yeah.
But one of the other things is the really big thing is actually Pikmin was probably the first and only game I have ever made a dedicated attempt to speed run. Because I really did want to see how fast I could beat it. And the real puzzles in Pikmin came not from the how do I get all the pieces, because I knew how to get all the pieces. The question came, how can I get all the pieces in this area in as few days as possible? Which, I might be wrong, maybe it's not 7 days, because I seem to remember that some areas required you came back with a Pikmin that you couldn't have gotten that early.
Yeah.
But so maybe it's 9 days, something like that, because I think there's 7 areas. But the question came, and when speedrunning it, it was, how do I move this quickly? How do I beat this boss within, 2 minutes of starting, and then from there,
and not just that, but also, how do I get my hands on enough Pikmin of the correct type?
Because you have to grow the Pikmin. It's also, how do I rush to the next boss? How do I get... And then sometimes you'll have to just go and get a piece and have the Pikmin just bring it back and hope that they bring it back in time. So stuff like that. That was a thing. I will tell you, that was a hell of an endeavor that I had to deal with.
No, so are you going to try and get this skill point legit, or are you?
I really don't want to be honest with you.
Well, then just blow yourself up.
I think the viewers will kill me. I mean, that's the thing. I think the viewers will legitimately kill me if I cheese this.
Well, can't help you either way.
Yeah. Let's see. Oddworld Stranger's Wrath, I think, is a game that I probably played that is probably a fairly rare play for most people.
A lot of people might be familiar with it. It didn't get a lot of press, but it got a reasonably good amount of... It got reasonably good press.
Yeah, the reviews were fairly good for it.
But I think part of it, that one might also be that it came out at a time when a lot of people didn't have a clue what the heck was going on with Oddworld.
True. Beyond Good and Evil.
Another game that is sadly underappreciated. Well, actually, it's extremely appreciated, but it's not appreciated by the guys that made it. Yeah,
there's not enough people. I'm still waiting for Beyond Good and Evil 2, like everybody else.
Yep.
Enslaved Odyssey to the West.
That one got extremely good press, but it just didn't get bought for some reason.
Let me think.
Here's one. I don't have the first one in the set, but the Graffiti Kingdom games for the PS2.
Heard of, never played.
The first one is basically Pokemon, with the caveat that you are actually drawing your Pokemon. Like you draw things and they become your Pokemon. So it relies somewhat on your artistic skills and also, your ability to link pieces and whatnot together. The second one is an action adventure game where you have like your basic character, and then you can draw little characters. You can take control of the enemies too, but you can draw characters and use them, and the body parts you get dictate the abilities you have.
So we're gonna have to go back for that skill point.
Yeah.
I'll retry it at some point. Let me think. I heard about Graffiti Kingdom, never played it.
Disaster Report, familiar with those?
Maybe.
We got 2 of them, and there's been several of them. The first one was sort of you're a guy on a island that was an artificial island that suddenly becomes racked with like massive flooding, earthquakes.
Dead aim.
Do you want the look up on that one? Destroy 3 destructible towers while on the pirate barges.
3 destructible towers? Okay, that I have to actually figure out what that means.
2 different users gave me info. One used the Rhino 4 and just shot everything that wasn't on the pirate barge. The other used the Judicator. Indiscriminate firing, apparently. Let me think. Unusual games. What have I got here? Tulip. There's one that very few people might have played.
I've actually, I think that might be getting a little bit more visuals now that Game Grumps have covered it. But, Tulip is definitely an interesting one. A very weird one.
Very strange. Good, but another one, Steambot Chronicles.
I actually played Steambot Chronicles. I really tried to like it. I got a very decent way into it, and the game just held no appeal, unfortunately.
Some people will like it, some people won't. If you're the kind of person like us that wants to try and 100% things, it is the kind of game that is like deliberately designed to be your bane, because you cannot 100%. It is impossible to get a 100% in any one run of the game, and there is no New Game Plus.
Yeah.
You can do everything, but you can't do it all in one go.
Well, also, not only that, but it also just... The gameplay gets so stale.
That's true.
That was my problem with it. Well, how about, what's the name? Oh, God. Blast Corps. On the N64.
Oh, I have fond memories of Blast Corps.
I have fond memories, and I also have very bad memories of Blast Corps.
I have fond memories of Blast Corps the second time I played it. The first time I played it, and I do not remember like the actual reason it did this, but the very first time I played it, I think I played it when I was sick and tired, and it gave me nightmares for reasons that I cannot remember anymore.
Well, when I played Blast Corps, I was a very young kid. You gotta remember, when I got the N64, I was... 6. So, most of my N64 playing prior to being an adult was around that age. And I just couldn't figure out why, after I beat a level, I couldn't go back and play it again. Blast Corps doesn't allow you to do that. Once you beat a level, you're done with that level. You don't ever play it again. And I never got to the stupid places like the moon. I never beat the Bane game. I remember I liked a certain couple of vehicles, including the front flip robot and the side flip robot.
Oh, yes.
I loved those vehicles, and I never wanted to play anything else. So when I wasn't allowed to play them forever, I got really upset, so I never beat it.
A lot of players also on that one also that I know at least get stuck on the one. A lot of players I know also get stuck on the first sort of dump truck. There's the tower you just blew down.
I just blew one up, yeah.
Get stuck on the first dump truck level, the one you have to sort of sideswipe into things.
Yeah, sideswipe is... the game is really weird, is the problem. Just the first is the concept, that there is a truck that has a nuclear bomb on it that is... going on a pre-programmed path. You can't stop it. You can't do anything to it. It'll blow up if you do. And the pre-programmed path just happens to go through multiple cities full of people. So they evacuate the cities, but the problem is that the things are still there. The buildings are still there. So you, as the Blast Corps, must now go through the cities and destroy everything to make sure the bomb doesn't actually touch anything. And if you don't, you lose when the bomb touches anything.
And it explodes.
And it explodes and kills everything.
Yeah. That, I'm pretty sure, was what was giving me nightmares.
Yeah. But when you beat each level, you had a chance to go back into the level and see if there were any secrets that you missed and destroy 100% of the buildings and things like that.
There were like 3 different collectibles you could get. There was destroying 100% of the buildings, finding 100% of the sort of landing light thingies, and rescuing 100% of the rescue of the people who needed rescuing.
Yeah. And the landing light things, god damn that collectible. They were just these little goddamn lights on the ground, and you had to walk over them or drive over them to destroy them, basically. And what would happen is you'd get 99 out of 100 of them, and then you'd have to go back and you'd go, what? I've been everywhere. I've covered every square inch of this place. And you'd never find the last one.
I was going to say, and the radius for activating these things were really small.
And so this is another one of the games that I went back and I watched a Let's Play of it because I refused to play it again. And it was enjoyable to watch as a game, but it's not a game I'd ever want to actually play again. But Blast Corps, I don't think, got a lot of wide press. I'd be surprised if it did, to be completely honest with you.
It was one of those rare titles that, and I mean that literally, that it got very remembered fondly after the fact.
Yeah, that happened fairly frequently. I only saw one pirate float thing.
Right. Well, we're not done with the level yet, are we?
Well, the boss is right here.
Huh.
Unless it's talking about like the potential pirate float things that we can do a little bit later on.
Probably. It's all on this planet. That's all I can remember.
Okay, so we now have all the weapons. The Omega versions. Don't ask me if I'm ever going to get them. I also, if you haven't noticed, I do have all the Raritanium I need for the Golden Groovatron.
Yay! Let's see.
So that means that I will never, ever again need money or Raritanium. I'm done.
Now you're saving for your college fund.
Pretty much.
Or your retirement at this point, I suppose. No. Is that no?
I know. I'm thinking too. I'm just trying to think of just games I have played. It's amazing. This conversation is going to last us hours.
It's not that it's not a game that nobody's heard of or played, because a lot of people have now at this point. Killer 7. Just about anything but by Suda can be considered unusual.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'll say Radiata Stories.
Radiata Stories, yep, definitely.
How do I think? Because I made when GameStop stopped selling PS2 games, I actually made a habit of going in and looking through the PS2 games and buying tons of them. Just anything that looked interesting, because they were all really cheap. So I have actually, unfortunately, I can't look at it because it's behind me. But I actually have a shelf, and one of the shelves is each shelf is dedicated to a different system, and one of the shelves is dedicated to PS2, and I got several dozen. Okay, apparently I'm going to be down here then. Oh. I have several dozen games down there that are PS2 that I've never played. Let's see.
I'm trying to keep this also like to stuff that actually was available in the West, because I could go on for quite a while about import stuff.
Well, of course. I mean, imports, but I don't think that's in the spirit of the rules here.
No. I have a soft spot for any of the Atelier games, personally. We actually got quite a lot of those over here.
A fair amount. I don't know if I'd say a lot, but
we got Atelier Iris 1, 2, and 3 for the PS2. Both of the Mana Chemias. We got the DS game, although nobody ever remembers it. We got all four of the present. No, heck, 5 of the present PS3 games. So we're not doing too badly on that front, actually.
Is there supposed to be more than one pirate thing on this?
Pirate barge? I do not know. I'm literally reading. Destroy 3 destructible towers while on the pirate barges.
Barges, plural. Let's see.
Okay, let me pull up another.
The PS2 had a lot of weird little games too. Like the PS2 and the Wii both had that distinction. They had a lot of
very weird little games, yeah.
Which are just ripe for this sort of conversation.
They're pure. Yeah, there are 2 towers on the Kerchu Fortress. Then you climb forwards. You don't have to get a pair. According to this, there's a glitch. At least according to the wiki, there's a glitch where you don't have to get them all from the barge. There are 2 that you can get from the barge, and then you keep going forward through the fortress until you find your way to the bridge where the 2 towers were. And the 3rd tower can be visible from there, and you can just blow that up.
Well, that's good, because the barge isn't here anymore.
Huh.
Uh-huh.
Maybe you have to leave the planet and come back?
Let's find out.
Yeah! Splat.
Let's see. Well, I'm thinking about it. Let's just go get the Golden Groovatron.
Yep. Let's see. Unusual. I have a soft spot for the Atelier games because I love crafting.
I think I can probably safely say that not a lot of people play 3D Dot Game Heroes.
That's probably true. It had a very bad print run, for starters.
Yep. I'm trying so hard not to talk about indie games that I have on my list, because, I mean, that would be way too easy.
Yeah.
I think I can probably safely say Overlord.
I love Overlord. I've got a soft spot for the Overlord series.
I mean, I think I could probably say that safely. I'm not sure, but
it didn't get enough love.
Well, I think the second one kind of put a nail in its coffin too.
There was a third.
Was there?
Well, sort of. There was the two. Well, let's get yourself your golden Groovitron. Let's see.
Are you sure? Yes. Are you positive? Yes. This is getting a bit excessive. Give me the golden Groovitron. Okay. Now I have the Groovitron.
And it will never run out.
Yep. Yep, I can toss as
Sorry,
many of them as I like.
I've just lost my train of thought now.
Let's see.
What were we at before you got the golden Groovitron?
Well, I commented on Overlord.
Overlord, yes. There were two other there's Overlord 1 and Overlord 2, and there were two more.
Well, there was the expansion to Overlord.
That was Raising Hell.
Right.
But there were actually two others. There was a DS game.
I've seen that. I've never played it though.
It's supposed to be. It's supposedly. I've heard of it, but I've never actually played it myself. It's supposed to function a lot like a. It's more of like a strategy tactical thing. Well, not a tactical. It's like a mini Pikmin.
Yep.
Or 3 Vikings. And there was one for the Wii.
I remember seeing something on that.
Which supposedly story-wise predates the other two.
Let's see.
I know the second one was particularly bad, but just like the first, it suffered from some unfortunate bugs.
It wasn't even the bugs for me. It was just it didn't have the magic the first did. The first had all these really good jokes and did all these really interesting things with itself. And then it had making the hobbits evil, for example, was and having the corrupted paladin and the super fat dwarf. They were
the super fat hobbit.
Yeah, the super fat hobbit. Sorry, the drunk dwarf, like the the dwarf that drinks and actually gets drunk dwarf.
Mm-hmm.
It just had all of these.
The evil versions of sort of all your standard hero tropes.
The corrupted paladin. It had such a very cool way of doing things.
The sex crazed paladin with the zombie ST. You can see those two towers there, really.
Oh, it's those two right there.
Those two blow up, I think.
Okay, so that's those two, and then there's
those
another
two.
one.
There's supposed to be a third one. No, supposedly you can.
Okay, we'll have to look for it.
Yeah, you can. Supposedly when you get to where those things were supposed to be, you can see a third one off in the distance, shoot it, and you get the skill point.
Let me think. I mean, there's a couple of things that, without delving too deeply into my computer. Oh, Day of the Tentacle.
Day of the Tentacle. I remember about that one, but a lot of people remember it, but I don't think a lot of people play it.
I didn't get to play it too much, unfortunately. It was on a friend's computer. And this was way back in the day, but A Day of the Tentacle was made by Psychonauts creators Double Fine, if I remember correctly.
Well, before they were
before they were Double Fine, but it was made by them.
I think it was.
And,
I think it was sort of back when. Part of the reason I think it wasn't so well known is because it was sort of LucasArts Baroque period almost. They didn't get a lot of exposure. And supposedly it's somewhere around there's a third one somewhere around here that you can shoot and blow up.
Okay, I'm looking for a tower. But Day of the Tentacle was hilarious. It was such a great game. I really
on the bridge here somewhere.
Oh, that one. Okay. Well, can I shoot it? There it is. Okay, there's dead.
There you go. You already had the other one.
Yeah, so we're done there.
We're done there.
But it was enjoyable. It was one of the first point-and-click adventure games I'd ever played. And it was a lot of fun. Like it. Okay, apparently we have to go through this entire section. And it was, it was very enjoyable. Did a lot of stupid things. It had a lot of just fun little things to do.
Also, good callbacks if you've ever played the original Maniac Mansion.
Yep. Which was also made by them.
Right. On a similar vein, Starship Titanic.
I've wanted to play that just because Douglas Adams was part of it.
Douglas Adams was part of it. Hell, he even made a cameo.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's fun, but it's definitely not what a lot of people expect.
And devastatingly difficult.
I wouldn't say it's so much difficult as devastatingly obtuse.
Well, isn't there like an item you have to get in the very beginning of the game that if you miss it, you lose?
No, you can't miss it, but you'll never think of using it.
Oh, okay. Because I know in the Hitchhiker's Guide, if you forget your towel at the very beginning of the game, you've already lost.
No, the Starship Titanic is, in theory, not like you can't get yourself into a dead man walking scenario. Okay. You can bugger yourself up pretty well, but there is no way to render the game unwinnable.
In theory.
In theory. I'm sure there is a way, but I've certainly never heard of it. And if there is, it will lie with the game's claim to both fame and infamy, and that would be the Spooky Talk system. Imagine engaging in IRC-style chat with the actual in-game characters. They're remarkably smart. They can respond to a lot of conversation topics, but you insult them and you could be in trouble.
Yep.
And this is where I think if you could break it, this is where you would get break it, because there is a way, like when the very first item you get aside from like the tutorial is your pet, your personal electronic thingy, and the pet does a couple things. It serves as your inventory, it serves as your way of talking, it serves as your map and all that, but it also has a little dials along the side. If you don't know what those dials do, you'll never really get it. But what those dials actually are they're indicators about the robot's mood. Everybody else on the ship is a robot except for you. If you insult the robots, understandably, they're going to be a little cheesed off at you. And most of them will refuse to talk with you or deal with you if you anger them. Sorry, there's a skill point for this level.
Yeah, I know what this one is. I actually know this one.
Which one are you going for?
There's only one skill point on this level. 6-gun salute.
Right. Are you sure you know what this one is?
Yep.
What is it?
It's not. It has nothing to do with 6. It has nothing to do with the word gun. It's the word 6 and the word salute.
Yes.
Yeah, the gun is a misnomer.
You need to.
It's something you have to pull this nonsense out.
Right.
And then you have to get 6 pirates to salute you.
Yes.
End of story.
Not necessarily at the same time.
Yeah. So if you can pull that off, that would be awesome.
Right. Sorry. Anyway, yeah. The thing is, the robots won't deal with you if you cheese them off. There is a way to reset them. In fact, as it turns out, that really neat art display that you get access to is in fact a bunch of secret switches that let you dwiddle with their personalities. This is, and it's necessary to do this to actually finish the game, because there is one character who starts out really cheesed off at you. Like she doesn't hate you, but she's not willing to do any favors for you.
Yep.
But if I remember correctly, there is a way to get locked out of that room. I've never seen it happen, but I'm fairly certain that if you screw up right off the bat, like you cheese them all off before you solve the first 2 puzzles.
Weird.
But still, if you do that, then you're like, 5 minutes away from restarting the game.
Yeah.
So, no big whoop.
Let's see, what was the other one I was thinking of? Jade Empire.
I love Jade Empire.
I don't think it got... So Jade Empire was made by BioWare. It was the one that came after Knights of the Old Republic, for those of you who don't know. And Knights of the Republic had such amazing success. And if I remember correctly, Jade Empire never got that. It just went away.
Yeah. It was a crying shame, because it was a really good game.
It was designed very well. I think part of the problem was that they were going way into some obscure territory as they went into Asian backgrounds.
Yeah.
They, a couple times they went borderline or not so borderline racist. They did some very weird stuff in the game, and I really enjoyed it. But it was a very different experience, especially because you went into it expecting almost Fable. That's how that's how the game was kind of portrayed, if I remember correctly.
It looks like that.
Style.
It looks like that, but it is closer to. It really is closer to Kung Fu Knights of the Old Republic.
It really is. So that was always I got Groovatrons, guys.
Ooh.
So that was always a thing.
Right.
But I think that one was a little bit more of a rarer play for most people, especially because it was Xbox. I think it was. Wasn't it Xbox only, or was it PS2 as well? I can't remember.
No, it was Xbox only at the time.
I mean, now you can get it on the PC
Steam.
if you want it.
But that reminded me of another title that was Xbox only at the time, and that is now you can get it on PC. And it remains. It was not a very good game. I will be blunt about that. It wasn't a very good game, but it was good enough, at least for me. And my biggest complaint is that they never got to finish it. It was Sudeki for the Xbox.
Sudeki. Nope, I have no idea.
It was an action RPG with you had 4 characters, 2 melee, 2 ranged, and it had a sort of 2 worlds, light and dark, big bad sort of thing going on. But from what I understand, it had this thing where there was going to be more, but something happened in development,
as is wont to do.
As is wont to do, and basically they were essentially forced to chump the final boss and cut out like half the story that was meant to be there.
I mean, this isn't anything new. The same thing happened to Fable, but Fable was eventually allowed to get it right.
Yeah, Sudeki never got that chance.
This is not the best place to be using those weapons.
Probably not. This one gave you trouble before.
Well, I'm trying to level up weapons here, and this is not the best place to be doing that.
Oh, I just thought of a good one. Something I've seen this game, one copy of it only once. I've seen it in a magazine twice. I've never heard of it again, and I swear to God, I do not know how this game got released.
Okay.
Whiplash for the
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Xbox.
I know the game.
I think there was a PS2 version too, but
Whiplash, you're talking about the one of the lab animals that
lab animals, yes.
Lab animals. One's a
tweaked out weasel.
One's a weasel, and he throws around a rabbit or something.
He is tied to a rabbit with one of those sort of ball and chain style, almost prisoner deals.
And he uses the rabbit as a weapon.
The rabbit is a weapon because he's functionally invulnerable due to a lot of cosmetic testing.
Yep. I remember seeing that also in gaming magazines, and I wondered if anything had ever come of it, if it ever actually released, because I never heard anything about it again.
It was released. I have a copy sitting next to me here. But I have never seen it very far, and every time I look at it and every time I play it, I think to myself, how in God's name did this game get released without PETA throwing a fit?
PETA wasn't big into games back then.
That's true.
Back then, the big enemy of games was Jack Thompson. And he was a little bit more interested. And he was a little bit more interested in Grand Theft Auto than in anything. He wouldn't have lifted a finger against Whiplash because it wasn't Grand Theft Auto. I mean, that was kind of the way of the world.
You could probably deploy Zircon too if you wanted some additional firepower.
That sounds like something I could do. And that's about the end of that phrase.
That's another title that was one that I could. No, I can't qualify that. It was never really released in the West.
Speaking of Jack Thompson, it always cracked me up that he just vanished.
Well, that's what happens when he lost his.
He got disbarred.
He got disbarred, and I think that took the wind out of his sails.
I think one of my favorite things about him, you remember his challenge to the video game industry, right? Do you remember this?
Make a video game.
Make a video game that was about a hospital trying to take care of all of the people that got killed and hurt in other video games. Now, do you remember that game actually got made?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't very good. It was an indie game. But a couple of people actually made the game for him, because I forget what he is. He put his mouth way out and said something like, he was going to give like $50,000 or something like that, or some large amount of money to anybody who would make this game. So 2 people made the game and said, okay, pay up, and it never happened.
Yeah. And then then a whole bunch of other people proceeded to fundraise a whole bunch of money, and they all gave it all to charity.
Yeah. I mean, it was a big, like, screw you to him, just because, people were like, hey, look what video games have done, that you won't admit ever happens. God, that was... God, I still crack up, because I actually wrote a paper about him once.
Very, very, very satisfying to see that happen to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the biggest opponents to video gaming in general.
Okay, here's one that I don't think a lot of people played, which I think was a bit of a pity. Avalon Code, DS.
I remember hearing about it.
The gimmick was that you basically your hero had a book, and in this book was contained everything that ever existed.
Okay.
The idea was that by hitting an enemy with the book, there was a button specifically for this. You could basically put them into the book, and then you could modify them. Every enemy had like a grid with pieces on it that represented different character traits.
Come on, salute me, damn it. There we go. Achievement unlocked. Now to kill everybody.
Everybody. And basically, the idea was that by modifying these different traits on things, you could change the way enemies, items, weapons, people behaved.
There's actually a game out, I say right now, and I really shouldn't date this episode as much as I'm going to. There's a game that's currently in early access on Steam called Hack and Slash, which is very similar to that. I haven't had a chance to try it yet. I'm very much looking forward to the time I actually get to do so. In Hack and Slash, it is literally a hacking game. And the idea behind the game, I don't know if this will actually come to fruition by the end of the game, but I understand that they're very deep into a development at this point. But as you play through, it is a bit of a dungeon diver, but you can actually hack the running code of the game as you play. And at the start, it's just like you'll hack a chest, and it will be, chest locked equals true, and then you'll change that to equals false, and now you can open the chest. So it's stuff like that, but eventually their plan is for the optional dungeons is for you to actually hack the running code and change the game in order to make the dungeon solvable. And there's actually a rewind button in the game in case you hack the code in such a way that makes the game unplayable. Which is a very interesting idea. So that's what that reminds me of.
Not, as I say, it's not really sort of the same...
Not the same exactly, but a very similar
same idea, yeah.
Yeah.
It was neat. It was neat in theory. In practice, it didn't quite work that well. Because doing anything required MP, and getting MP back most of the time required doing a very specific attack on enemies that took a very long time, and it was very boring to do.
Well, anything that does something like that is always a problem. I mean, by the way, I think we've maxed out health at this point. Looks like health maxes out at 1,000. So the problem is, I'm delving into the depths of memory, and the problem is, mostly nowadays I play indie games, so remembering some of the non-indie games of yesteryear gets kind of hard sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially some of these games that I haven't, thought about or played in well over a decade. I'm sitting here trying to remember them.
I remember another good one that was... Nobody seems to remember this, and it's weird because it was a Squaresoft game.
That doesn't really mean much.
Urkeis, God Bless the Ring. That was its full name. It was a...
I like, the name seems familiar, but I'd be lying if I said I remembered it.
It was a Squaresoft-made game that was a fighter. Apparently, it was an arcade version in Japan, but everything's an arcade version in Japan. It was for the PS1, and it was an action sort of fighter game with a mysterious dungeon sort of secondary mode.
Okay.
and it had I can't even remember what the story was, but the Mysterious Dungeon was fun. It sort of was Mysterious Dungeon mixed with some fighting game tropes, because it was a fighting game. And there was a standard basic fighting game in there and among the characters you could play as included Cloud, Tifa, Sephiroth, and Vincent.
Okay.
They were there primarily because, it was
Squaresoft
and fan service. It came out roughly around the same time that Einhander did. That was their side-scrolling sort of R-type style shooter.
Right. I mean, I can. Do you remember Claymation Fighters?
Clay Fighters.
Clay Fighters?
Yes, I remember Clay Fighters.
And it was terrible, and we try not to remember it, but
it wasn't a great game, but it was. Again, I'm going to have to rely on a quote from a friend. It was not a good game, but it was a fun game. It was stupid fun.
To a given extent, yeah. I mean, I don't know how much fun I'd say for that game, just I remember that game. But
well, not saying fun doesn't necessarily mean like fun to play, but fun as in you could look at it and smile.
It was an interesting concept.
Right. Oh wow, he took out half your health in one hit.
Yep. I mean, I'm not playing particularly well either. I was leveling up weapons. Because these things hit like a truck. You know what? No. Not dealing with it.
Yeah, I was going to say you really shouldn't be trying to
okay, I'll get hit by it anyways.
They push you off.
Yeah, it just pushes me off the cliff. Okay, I have my gun. There, we're not dealing with this. By the way, folks, at this point in the game, the Rhino has become the most... It already was, but it is undoubtedly the most unfair weapon in the game, because this thing is going to rip Tachyon to pieces. There will be no fight. Because look how fast I'm killing this guy, and I'm only using about 100 shots per round here. It's considered to be the most unbalanced weapon in the game. It's too good, and it's a dedicated boss killer. If you have the Rhino Forever level VX, you will never again need any other weapon in the game. Partially because of how much ammo it has, partially because of how much damage it deals. So this is a very unfair weapon, which is why I'm using it. God, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of any other weapons, just off the top of my head. Weapons. Oh, there goes Mako. This happens every once in a while. It's been a while since this happened, but let's see if we can get Mako back.
Ratchet, I can download the coordinates to the Cragmite homeworld by accessing Krog's comm unit.
Mako might not be coming back.
Hello?
Oh, there we go.
I don't know what happened there. It just seemed to drop connection.
It's been a while since it did that, so I mean... Hey, look, the mapper! We have it again.
Well, as I was saying, at least we don't have to take any flack from Tachyon.
Yep, pretty much. Oh, Tachyon's just gonna vanish. Like, Tachyon's just gonna melt. Let's see, are there any other games that I can think of? Actually, this is actually partially becoming a game of, are there any other games I can think of? I'm starting to reach that point in this discussion.
It's a good way to sort of think back on some good stuff. I'm partial to Metal Saga, but almost nobody's heard of that one. And it's from a series that we only ever got one of.
I mean, I could say, I know this one was fairly popular, so I don't think I could, call this to be one of the, like a rarity game. But Ogre Battle 64.
Ogre Battle, yes, that was... you can't really call it rare, you're right, but it was one that sort of not a lot of people sort of seem to get.
The problem with Ogre Battle 64, I have a very bad history with that game. My sister had it, for reasons I don't understand. I don't know why my siblings got some of these games, because, number one, too old for them, and because she was like 8 at the time. But number two, it was my sister got an N64, and mine wasn't working at the time, because if I remember correctly, I got sick and threw up on it. Don't ask, I'm not sure how it happened either. But, so my sister had an N64, and I really wanted to play the game, because I had rented it, so I went and I played, and I couldn't take the game out of her room, for reasons that should be obvious. So I went in her room and played it, and the problem was my sister had a guinea pig at the time, and I'm pretty allergic to many small animals, especially the ones that I really like guinea pigs. So, let me just go back here and heal up again after that. But, so, you know, I was pretty allergic, but the problem is, it was in her room, and so was the N64. So I ended up playing Ogre Battle 64 for something like 3 hours, and by the end of this time, I was very ill. You know, I was having trouble breathing, I had a bad headache, I was feeling intensely nauseous, mostly because of just the allergies that I just allowed to continue, because I wanted to play this game. Not to mention the fact that, for anybody who knows Ogre Battle 64, they'll know that as the probably 11-year-old that I was, that game was probably too old for me. Not in terms of content, but in terms of difficulty.
Or complexity. And
complexity
too.
As well. That's
I mean, like, I am nowhere near that age at this point. I don't want to date myself that badly, but even now, like, there are grown men in their 40s who have trouble understanding the full mechanics of the Ogre Battle series. It's that bad.
Yeah, I mean, Ogre Battle it's very complex. It does a very good job at complexity and giving you...
You might have thought the numbers on, say, the Final Fantasy Tactics games were bad. Ogre Battle puts those to shame sometimes.
And there's unlocking new characters, and there's leveling up,
and also all the liberation and the class modifications.
Yeah,
storyline, the story branches.
So one day
it was
I
not
wanna go
hurting
back
for
and play
content, but you would never understand it.
But it was one of those games that, you know, it was spoiled in my mind because I made the mental association very young that Ogre Battle 64 means I feel terrible. So the game wasn't bad, but I felt bad thinking about it, which was always a huge thing. So, the Ogre Battle 64 was one, and it probably wasn't the biggest game at the time, but I know it is now, especially with Ogre Battle Tactics out now.
Oh, yes, the
PSP
one, yes.
Speaking of PSP games, Patapon.
Patapon. I like Patapon, but a lot of people don't.
I love Patapon, and I don't think it really ever made it big, I guess.
It managed big enough to have 2 sequels, which is unusual.
Yeah, definitely unusual.
But I get the feeling that it was also a low impact, like it didn't take a lot to release.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like it was a huge development cycle game for being as good as it is.
Inexpensive to manufacture was my thought.
Yeah, yeah. And I think also there was and Patapon is actually one of the games that if you know the idea behind the game but have never actually played it, you're not going to get what I'm about to say. But Patapon is one hell of a grindy game. Like, to people who have never played Patapon, you're going to look at this game, you're going to go, wait, you do stuff in rhythm to things. How is that a grindy game? And the thing is, in order to do the really interesting stuff in the game, you would have to get yourself the specialty classes of Patapon, and in order to get those, you would have to get a certain amount of drops to specifically unlock the specialty class. You had to get those drops for each individual Patapon, especially in Patapon 3, that you intended to get you intended to upgrade. And the drops you would get maybe 1 or 2 of every time you ran a mission. So you ended up doing this extraordinary amount of work to get these specialty classes, and you'd end up spending hours to get 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah. Okay, a game, it's not particularly special in any way, but it's got a sort of soft place in my heart. I've heard of Guruman?
Maybe?
It was an action RPG for the PSP that revolved around this little girl moves to live with her, I think with uncle or grandfather or something, in a mining town that's out in the middle of the boonies. And there's like nobody else there. Like, she's the only kid living there.
Okay.
And she finds that there's this little hole in the wall that nobody else seems to notice that leads to a world populated entirely by monsters. And we're not talking like bad monsters, we're talking like the Monsters, Inc. kind of monsters.
And yet mentally I still have the Mystery of Amigara Fault stuck in my head.
And basically adults apparently can't see these monsters. They've got their own little world, and something is going horribly, horribly wrong with this world. Like, there's this big old mist is coming down and covering things. These weird critters are popping up. People are getting amnesiac. Pieces of the city are falling apart. And it becomes... So she takes it on herself to take this drill that she found lying around and go and, fix things. And half the fun is sort of finding this drill, playing with it, and seeing exactly what you can get away with, like blowing up, tearing down. It was just a very light-hearted, sort of action-y jump around with a couple of light RPG elements.
Yeah, Amigara Fault. Don't go look that up, by the way. Please, for the love of God, do not go look that up.
I'm pretty sure I know that one, but...
no, not you, the viewers.
Yeah. But yeah, it was fun. Apparently, the company that has the rights to it, Mastiff, they're looking to release it. This is the sort of RPG that if like a mother said, I've got my 12-year-old son, I want to let him play a game, but I don't want it to be anything violent. This is the sort of game I'd suggest to them. And apparently the rights holders, Mastiff, I think was originally translated by Falcom, or done by Falcom and translated by Mastiff. They have the rights to it. They're trying to get it released, a PC version of it released on Steam. If you feel like doing that, and I don't know if you'll do any good to say that now, they're apparently doing it through Greenlight, so God knows it'll do any good.
Hopefully.
Well, Greenlight has managed to get some very unusual things out, so who knows?
Yep. Let's see. I think of any... I remember the old Simpsons game, not the side-scrolling one in arcades. I'm talking about the Game Boy one.
Oh God, there were a couple of those.
I'm talking about it was like the Simpsons American Gladiators or something like that.
Oh yes, there was a couple of those.
Yeah, you went into a box. The only thing I remember is the ridiculously hard level. You went into a boxing ring, and it was I think it was oh God. What was it? It was Bart against the really scary guy who was always trying to kill him. I remember that was the fight that none of us could ever beat. Ever. It just didn't happen.
No, there were a handful of games like that. There are 3 Simpsons games that I have played that I have actually liked. And they've been around a long time, so they've actually had a lot of games. The first of those was the arcade game, like the old beat-em-up.
Yep.
Then there was, I'm quite fond of the Simpsons, they're not their Crazy Taxi one, they sort of just drive around and blow stuff up style.
Simpsons Hit and Run?
Hit and Run, that was it, yes. I quite like Hit and Run. And the other one, EA, I think it was EA who did it, they seem to have want to pretend that this one didn't happen. But the one that was the Simpsons video game that was for the 360 and the PS3.
Just Simpsons the movie?
No. It was Simpsons. It was just the Simpsons video game. It wasn't based on the movie. It came out at least a year before that.
I don't remember that off the top of my head.
Very few people seem to, and EA or whoever the developer for it was, I can't remember. I'm certain it was EA. They seem to want to pretend it didn't happen. Basically, the idea was that one day Bart's sort of wandering around through town, and this book falls from the sky in front of him. It's the manual to the video game, like the one you are actively playing.
Oh, lovely. I can't think of many, if any, games I've ever seen that have pulled that trope off correctly. It
plays, and what's more, like each of the you go through a handful of levels based on different characters doing things, and they read the manual and they discover they've got these abilities in this video game, and it just gets stranger and stranger from there as you go into other worlds that they go into like the terrible sequels that never actually occurred.
Okay.
There's the Medal of Honor, more Medal of Homer.
Yeah.
And the terrible Pokemon ripoff.
I mean, that reminds me of, and I'm probably going to get crucified for saying this, but that reminds me of the Conker's Bad Fur Day. I think the game's terrible. I have played the game.
It's not a great game, but it's funny.
I have played the game. I have beaten the game. And I still think it's terrible. And for a given definition of funny, it was funny.
It's B-movie terrible.
Because, yes, the Mighty Pooh. Yes, we got it. It's wonderful.
I must admit, I will qualify this. I liked Conker's Bad Fur Day. It wasn't a great game, but I had fun with it. But I will qualify that I only liked the N64 version. I think the remake was terrible. It looked nicer, but it was modified in ways it didn't need to be.
The problem was, I think, basically after the Great and Mighty Pooh, for the most part,
it peaked.
That was the peak. It was the first boss in the game, and that's where it peaked. Then it went into the, vampire area, and then you went into the Call of Duty area. And this was years before Call of Duty was a big deal, so it's not as if it was actually making fun of anything that was actually happening at the time. This was the first Medal of Honor that actually came out around that time. I mean, it wasn't as if there was a lot of stuff going on. But
I seem to remember this thing took forever to kill the first time you did it.
I think this one has arbitrarily high health. Luckily, it's not attacking me.
But yeah, it's you don't want to be underneath it because it'll start smacking you.
Yeah, I saw that.
But yeah, there was so many. But yeah, there was that one Simpsons game that nobody remembers. It was okay. What was fun? Do you are we spoiler safe for this one? Do you care?
I'm assuming so. This sounds like a really old Simpsons game.
It came out. It was, I don't know, 2 or 3 years into the 360 PS3.
It's at least 5 years old at this point. I mean,
yes. Basically,
on your head be it, but
it had the weirdest sort of end ever because eventually you went to heaven and you broke God's consoles.
Sounds about right. I mean, keep in mind we're talking about Star Ocean till the end of time. I mean, you got to remember what that game did.
Yes, that's true.
The nonsense that game pulled.
That's true. Let's see. What else have I got that might be unusual to mention? Just thinking of stuff, not even stuff that's rare at this point, but things that are worth mention and worth discussion.
There's a lot of good games out there. The question is, which of them have been done to death? So, for example, I'd love to comment on Knights of the Old Republic, but that game has been out for not only years, but everybody and probably their grandmother has played it.
Yeah.
But it's stuff like that. I'd love to comment on stuff like that, but it's just they're so well known. I mean,
everyone's done that one. Yeah.
Icewind Dale is probably one I could mention.
I have never played Icewind Dale. I have heard of it so much about it, but
so Icewind Dale, for those of you who don't know, and I'm assuming there's actually probably going to be a fair amount of people, even though I hear it's receiving a resurgence in popularity now. Icewind Dale is made by the same people with the same style as Baldur's Gate. So if you've played Baldur's Gate, you've basically played Icewind Dale. The difference is that Baldur's Gate went for a storyline perspective. It had a storyline going. It was a massive campaign you were following along. And, it had storyline-related characters, and you were playing along with the DM's campaign, basically. That was the idea. On the other hand, Icewind Dale was very specifically a treasure dive campaign. There was a story. I mean, there was a story going on, but it wasn't involved. There were not really storyline characters. You invented your own PCs.
Sorry.
So,
I'm remembering this more now. I remember when they were advertising this, they were very heavily pushing for Baldur's Gate, they were pushing the story and all that. For Icewind Dale, they were very heavily pushing the sort of the GM, the digital GM, digital storytelling thing. They were pushing it as a tool, more a tool than less a game.
I mean, I guess you could say that, but the thing is, there was no digital GM, as far as I'm aware. There was no level creation that I recall. Because there was a story, there was a level design, and that was it. It wasn't like a tabletop thing you could invent your own levels in. It had that. It had its own thing. But it was very much that it was very specifically a dungeon diving game, and it wasn't a story-related one. There was a story, but the story was there to get you from point A to point B. It wasn't there for you to be following the story. Whereas in Baldur's Gate, you're following the story, and each dungeon you go into is related to the story in some way, except for the variety of optional ones.
Right.
There were no named PCs, so you didn't have Imoen, you didn't have Boo and what's his name, Minsk. You didn't have them. You made your own PCs. You know, in Baldur's Gate, when you start up the game from scratch, you made one guy. If you're doing it the canonical way, you made one dude, and everybody else you got was a named NPC was a named PC that followed you, right?
Mm.
On the other hand, in Icewind Dale, there were no named PCs. You made all 6 characters of your party the second you started the game. And everything was unlocked, all the classes that were available in AD&D were available at the time. And that's just how it was. And the game was really good. I remember it being very enjoyable. I remember we never beat it because we didn't understand the rules of AD&D. We didn't understand any of the rules. Like, we didn't understand the rules of D&D either. So it wasn't as if it was just the complexity of AD&D was the thing. We just didn't get the rules. So, like, my friend wanted to play the Ranger, even though, from what I understand, the Ranger is one of the worst classes in the game. But it looked cool, so we did it. But I remember very fond memories of that game, especially as I got older, because we always tried to go back to it. And it was one of the first multiplayer RPGs, to my memory. Because what you could do, if you both had a copy of it, and this was a rare thing, like, my friends never had a copy of this game. But if you could get your friend to get a copy of it, what you could do is you could over TCP IP connection. This should tell you how old this is. Over TCP IP connection, you could direct connect to your friend, invite him into your game, and he would control half the PCs-ish. Mm. And that's how you would do it. And that's how you would advance the game. So he controlled half the PCs, you controlled half the PCs. You couldn't go on separate screens. You had to be in the same areas. And then you shared pauses and everything like that. I've really wanted to do that game with someone too, because you know that's a BioWare game, right?
Yeah, I think I have it. I own. If any of you are sort of curious about some of these older PC stuff, Good Old Games, yep. And like if Steam doesn't have it, Good Old Games does.
Steam. I don't know if Steam has Icewind Dale. I know Steam has Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 because they got remade. Mm. But I'm not sure about Icewind Dale.
Well, like I said, I never got into Icewind Dale. My ones were Neverwinter Nights.
Yep. Which are also the same people.
Yeah.
Well, folks, our discussion on old games will have to come to an end. If we remember, it may continue in the future, so you may have a 3rd hour, or is it 4th hour now, of us reminiscing. God, I feel old. But that's a scary thing. I feel old. But we will leave you guys here. When we return, Clank level. We'll see you guys soon.